yesterday, there was like 32 people here last night, which was pretty awesome for the 5 o'clock Eucharist. And every time I say we're going to have a 5 o'clock Eucharist, I will undoubtedly have someone say to me, "Isn't that Catholic?" I wish I had a nickel for every time someone said to me, "Isn't that Catholic?" We would have paid off the mortgage. We would have built a $70 million church. I would have had an airplane like one of those televangelists. The answer is no. The answer is it's Jewish. It's Jewish. Literally, when you open up the Bible to the first phrase of the Bible, in the beginning, Genesis 1:1, God created the heavens and the earth, right? And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that the light was good. And God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and then morning, one day. Notice how the day was calculated. There was evening and then morning. It's almost the antithesis of what our modern mindset is, right? Even though we think we begin the day at midnight, which is kind of like the evening, right? For us, it's at sunrise, right? Sunrise to sunset. But the opposite was true in Judaism. It was evening that began the day, and it was the light that ended the day. God kind of puts his little stamp of approval on this in Leviticus. So when he's talking about Shabbat, or the Sabbath rest, when he's talking about the major feasts of Israel, remember there were spring feasts, Passover, there were the 3 major fall feasts. Here's your quiz for today. What are the 3 major fall feasts in Judaism? Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, everyone gets stuck on the 3rd. It's the 10th one, yes, Sukkot. Right? That's sometimes known as the Feast of Booths. I always think of a dunk tank when I hear the word booths. Or the Feast of Tabernacles, right? So it starts out Rosh Hashanah, which is the Feast of the New Year, the beginning of the year when the world was created. Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, which is 10 days afterwards. And then the Feast of Sukkot, or Tabernacles, that reminds the Israelite community of when they were provided by the Lord in their 40-day wilderness journey. But God says to Moses, this is about Yom Kippur, on the 9th day of the month, beginning at evening, from evening to evening, you shall keep your Sabbath. So the day begins with evening and goes until the next evening. All of the first Christians were Jewish. I don't know if that's a news flash. It shouldn't be, but they all were. They see in Christ the Messiah, the Son of God, the fulfillment of all of the covenant. They see in him the temple, the priest, the victim. All of the feast days are summed up in Christ, and all of them reach their zenith in him and the Paschal mystery with his passion, death, and resurrection. The resurrection which changed the whole course of eternity. The resurrection which begins the new creation. His resurrection with triumphs over death and darkness. The resurrection was the day. And they began to worship Christ, and they called it the Lord's Day. You hear about it in the book of Revelation. John has his major revelation when he was worshiping on the Lord's Day. The Lord's Day, the celebration of Sunday, which is why you are at church. We celebrate the resurrection that changes the course of human history. That's why we worship on Sunday. But guess when Sunday begins? In the evening. In the evening. In the evening. This is from my favorite traveling nun, Egeria. And you've heard me talk about Egeria a lot. Egeria was a nun from Spain. She travels to the Holy Land in about 380, 381. And she hangs out with the Christians in the Holy Land for a whole year. And she begins to write every liturgy that she experienced and how she experienced it to send back to the nuns in Spain. This is how they begin Sunday. Now at the 10th hour. All right, what time is that? Anyone know what the 10th hour was in this world? I'll give you a hint. 9 a.m. was the 3rd hour. So start to calculate, right? Third hour is at 9, 6 hours at noon, ninth hour is at 3. So what time's the 10th hour? 4 in the afternoon. They would gather at the Anastasis, which was the tomb of Jesus. Candles, tapers were lit. They would begin to sing psalms and antiphons, and then the bishop would come, and he would take a seat. And then they would sing more psalms and antiphons, and then he would preach. By the way, they didn't preach for like 10 or 15 minutes. He would have preached like for hours upon hours. And then they would have all been dismissed, and then they would have came back right before cockcrow. Sometimes, depending on what that day was, they would go all night. And then as the sun was coming up, they would celebrate Eucharist. But they would begin to worship on the Lord's Day at the first 4 o'clock Mass on Saturday night. Our Sunday literally begins in the evening because it brings us back literally to our Jewish roots and the book of Genesis. But why? Why does the day begin with darkness coming and end with light? Because darkness will never have the last word. Light will always have the last word of the day. Light will always have the last word. We live in a world right now that doesn't only seem like evening sunset, but seems like dead in the middle of night. When you look at the world around us, it feels like we are wrapped in darkness. And the song of empire and empire's hatred and brutal division seems to be getting louder and louder and louder. The hatred, it seems like if everyone is angry. Do you ever feel that way? Everyone seems angry. And the us and them mentality keeps growing and growing and growing. Last night's actions in Pittsburgh with the assassination attempt against former President Trump and the bloodshed that was there is literally one measure in a phrase and a song of empire's hatred that just seems to keep happening. Gun violence keeps to be increasing. When our children have to go through shooter drills, there's a problem, gang. There's a problem. When our brutal hatred seems to keep dividing us and dividing us and dividing us. It's the same what we heard today in the death of John the Baptist. Herod and his lovely bride Herodias, right? For those who remember, this is like Dynasty. For those old enough to remember this, right? Right? And there's a line that I don't know if you heard. She had a grudge against him and wanted to kill him. We've been at each other's throats since Cain and Abel. We have this thing of the other, where we posit another, and we may not physically kill that other person, but with words we can kill them spiritually. But the good news is that night is not the final answer and the final word. It's the light. Christ's resurrection that we celebrate today is the end. The war is over. Christ has destroyed it. Right now we are fighting skirmishes, but that has to take the whole church. You know, we sing that cute little song, "This Little Light of Mine." But you have been given light. We know that the final answer is light. You have been given a light. But we all have to start doing better, church. All of us, especially those who bear the cross on their foreheads. All of you who have been baptized and washed in the blood of the Lamb, who have been marked as Christ's own forever, who've been received the light of Christ, need to go out and start doing something. I don't know if you noticed what you all sang in that song, God of Grace and God of Glory. We sing it a lot because I love it. But there's that one line in verse 3. Save us from weak resignation to the evils we deplore. Save us from weak resignation. Sometimes we throw our hands up in the darkness This is just the way it's going to be. This is the way it has to be. No! From Genesis, light is the end. Christ is the end. But you have a role to play in that. You know, I'm a big Harry Potter egghead. You all know that, right? And one of my favorite scenes is in book 6 when Dumbledore dies. And there's the death mark over top of Hogwarts. Sorry if you don't have a Potterhead, I'll explain. But there with evil over top as Dumbledore, the great leader, is dead, right? And you see in the movie, everyone raise their wands and light them. And as everyone lit together, the dark mark dissipates. But it took everyone to do that. What songs are you singing in your heart? Are they the songs of hatred and division and violence? Don't blame other people for hatred and division and violence. We need to look at our own stuff. How do you talk about people that may disagree with you? How do you talk about your neighbor? Are we listening to each other, or are we just talking over each other? Are we just our own individual news pundit heads that want to just keep talking over people and hope that's going to change things? Do you want to keep singing the songs of hatred and division, or do you want to do something about it? Lord, save us from weak resignation. We as Christians need to be bearers of the light. And it's got to start with you. Don't point your finger at someone else. Don't wait for this person to do it, the state to do it, the church to do it. Christ needs you to do it. Because if all of us start to become people of light, the darkness will dissipate. But we got to stand up and start loving. We have to start loving. We have to start being people of unity. We have to start people who fight against the division. Because no one's going to change it except for you and the grace of Christ that's in your heart. So what I said to the 5 o'clock crowd last night is, be people of hope. If you're coming to the 5 o'clock, you are saying the day may begin in darkness, but it's going to end in light. It's going to end in the power of the resurrection. It's going to end in love. It's going to end in unity. That's where we are headed, and we will do something with Christ about it. God of grace and God of glory, give us courage for the facing of this hour. May Christians be Christians. They originally knew us as followers of Christ, not because of the cross around your neck, or the shield of the Episcopal Church on your car, or the statue of whatever saint in your yard. They knew us as people of love. Do you think they do that now? Nope. Because we're too busy fighting with everybody. There was evening, and then there was morning. Be people of the morning. Be people of the light. Be people of love. In the words of Martin Luther King, darkness cannot cast out darkness. Only light can cast out the darkness.